Hey guys, so we're going to continue with Ballads at Midnight. This is part 3, so we'll just continue. Chapter 5, Rhythm and Rain. The heavens are generous with rain this year. Within a fortnight of my stay, black clouds had begun blotting out the moon. A few days later, we were neck-deep in Alluvia's rainfall season. At first, I was nervous that the most would overflow and flood the estate, but the weather was wickedly fickle. The rain frequently stopped and began anew like a broken music box. Nonetheless, the ground outside was perpetually muddy. I spent a lot of time indoors. I was reluctant to soil the only boots I owned, and Lucius gave me hell whenever I left dirty footprints in the halls. Tonight, a thick fog hangs like a curtain outside. The windows shake and rattle, straining against the storm. But I'm inclined to set foot in violently dreary weather. I'm disinclined to set foot in violently dreary weather. So this is an optimal opportunity to write some new songs. I was surprised to find a number of brushes, parchment, and writing quills stowed away in a cupboard, and even more surprised to find an inkwell that hadn't dried out. I recall how the vampire told me he housed an artist once and tried to picture whether said artist could have single-handedly smuggled in all these materials. He must have been much sneakier than me, or had a lot more pockets. If I were him, I would have prioritized smuggling in some food and weapons instead of art supplies. But I should be grateful to him in any case. I made myself a bowl of soup, boiled turnips and mushrooms so I could write without being interrupted by hunger. Lucius' disgusting fish can only tide me over for so long. While I never had much interest in cooking and often survived on trail rations in the past, I do know how to feed myself in a pinch. Although my soup is only palatable due to some dried herbs, I scrounged from the near-empty pantry. There must be unforeseen perks to living in a vampire's castle, but gourmet meals are certainly not one of them. Thankfully, I never had much interest in the finer things. While my soup cools, I start a small fire to keep myself warm. On the whole, my impromptu little workspace is comfortable, but I've always wanted a writing nook, and this may be the closest I'll ever get to having one. Unfortunately. I tapped the nib of my quill against the writing desk, glaring at the blank, loose-leaf piece of parchment. Call me a perfectionist, but I've refused to transcribe a song into my journal until I'm certain it's amazing. Besides, I found it's more freeing to write when I don't care for the paper I'm using. I scratch out the word before my quill compels the arc of the E. I have everything I need to write, don't I? But now I'm sitting down to do it. My head feels as foggy as the weather outside. Maybe I'm being too hard on myself. Let's try this again. There once was an old farmer who... The way of each word feels hackneyed and rotten, like old apples. I feel like I'm choking on them. I flipped the parchment over, feeling miserable with contempt. Stupid blank page. Before long, I find myself leafing backwards through my journal. It doesn't contain much of my original work, honestly. To survive as a travelling bard, I've had to memorize and rewrite songs that are already popular, already known. Original work, I quickly learned, was not often well received in an unruly tavern. I've been booed, had tomatoes thrown at me. I even gotten into brawls because someone wanted to hear a song I didn't know how to play. So I had to learn, I had to adapt, had to make it work at times. I've even stolen promising lyrics from my peers and rivals. I hated doing it, but I did it anyway. And for what? Freedom, coin, glory? Gods, with so much time to think, I can't help wondering if the life I've led has been one worth living. The vampire was right about the maddening silence. It must be well past midnight. Lucius should be here any minute now. I realised then that, while thoughts of his arrival used to fill me with dread, I've recently looked forward to seeing him. We've been surprising each other with how easily the conversations come, how willing we were to talk. I often find myself trying to stay awake to finish a thought, only to be shooed to bed the moment he catches me yawning. As much as it pains me, I just can't get the hang of the night cycles. I've tried because being in his company is far more preferable to being stuck with my own. Just leaves me cherishing the few hours we have together each night. Without even realizing it, I've flipped through every page of my songs. My hand pauses over the inside cover of my journal. I gazed absentmindedly at the strange runic symbol on the first page, some sort of bejeweled pendant encircled by a knotted half-wreath of thorns, which has somehow resisted fading no matter how often I've touched it over the years. Brushing over the bold red ink, I wonder if I'm imagining the faintly sharp prickle across the pads of my fingers. Below the symbol, written in a hurried, clumsy scrawl, are the words, "Keep safe, O." I once felt at ease from such simple words. Looking at them now only tightens the knot at the pit of my gut. Maybe this is a sign that I just needed to move on to bigger and better things, that I've been too rooted in the past. I shut the journal. My chair squeals against the floor as I stand up, resting my palms on either side of this blasted book. I could toss it to the fireplace if I wanted to. Here and now, I could break the final chains linking me to my past. Keep safe. Those were her instructions to me. Try as I might, I can't defy them. I gathered the journal to my arms, cradling it against my chest. For a moment, I could still feel that blossom of warmth from the words. Keep safe. I'm going to find Lucius. The silence truly is maddening. I gathered my things, striding out into the hall, only to collide unwittingly into the vampire lurking outside. He catches me by the forearms, taking a step back to keep us balanced, although my journal and supplies tumble to the floor. Lucius! Flame? Lucius releases me once he's sure I'm steady and immediately bends to pick up the mess. No, don't. I seize the journal and hold it away from him. He eyes me with some measure of confusion, but shrugs and picks up the loose parchment instead. I see you found some old supplies. I'm glad they're getting some use, though I really thought the ink would have dried out by now. What have you written so far? There once was an old man in a farm. I snatched documents from him. I won't have you making fun of my first drafts. What are you doing out here? I didn't wish to disturb you. You looked like you were trying to focus. In vain, perhaps. There was not much to disturb. But you were trying to be considerate, thank you. Lucius nods, dismissive but polite. He doesn't like to acknowledge gratitude. For you to rush out of the chamber like a bat from a cave? Why? Rushing to seek inspiration elsewhere? No. Gods, I just can't admit that I wanted to talk to him until I forget my grievances. Isn't it time for our nightly ballad? He watches me through the narrowing eyes, but favours me with a small smile. You need not hurry for such thing. If you wish to write tonight, you may write. Come. Wait. Lucius all but pulls me back into the chamber, coaxes me to be seated once again at the writing desk. I scowl at him, drawing my knees to my chest. Lucius, you don't... Heels off the furniture? I scowl at him hard, below my legs to flatten my heels to the floor. I wanted to write, but I couldn't think of anything. You also never finished your soup. It's gone cold. He looks pointedly at my bowl. You're a terribly slow eater, aren't you? I may yet expire before you finish it. I am not a slow eater. I am a distracted eater. Why do you want my soup? Here. I push it towards him. He gently pushes it back. No, thank you. My taste buds aren't quite what they used to be. A mortal's meal may as well be a mouthful of dust. That explains your cooking. Lucius arches a brow at me. Forgive me, that was uncalled for. Have I done something to annoy you? No, not at all. I chew my lip. I don't think I want to write anymore, and if I don't want any more of this soup... I was presumptuous then. I won't go that far. Look, we can just talk for a while. That was what I wanted. He extends his arms, gesturing me to take the opposite seat to him. I relocate gratefully away from the writing desk, slumping onto the cushioned bench. You have something on your mind? Yes, but I don't want to talk about it. I understand. What would you like to discuss instead? Lucius leans forwards with his elbow propped on his knees. With the candid way he's staring at me, I almost feel like I can tell him anything. But I'd rather not talk about myself, not yet. What do you eat? I mean, you sustain yourself with blood, but if you only get guests every couple of years, and even then, sometimes you let them go or you don't feed on them at all. I can make do with animal blood, fish mostly, as the moat is rich with them. Ah, that really explains this cooking. There's another thing I've been wondering. If you can't cross the water, how do you get the fish? By using tools like any civilized mammal? So a fishing rod, you fish. Sometimes I use a net, sometimes I use a spear, sometimes a rope. I have a very strong throwing arm. Against my better judgment, I observe his shoulders and upper arms, searching for any hints of bulging muscles under his sleeve. If Lucius notices me doing it, he keeps it to himself. For that matter, I'm surprised you haven't asked how I intend to ensure your freedom when I cannot cross the water myself. Because I haven't thought about what I'll do when I leave. The thought feels like an anchor in my chest, a heavy reminder of the future. I presumed you'd tell me when it was time. Of course, I can tell you early. It will simply throw you across the moat like a javelin. You wouldn't. He practically cackles as I recoil from him. I wouldn't. There is another way. I will show you in due time. Ah, then good. We lapse into a hollow silence as my mind wanders back to my troubles until the vampires start making a tutting sound at me. He stood in my face with intent, and I realised too late that my pleasantly neutral facade has at some point fallen into a frown. You're in low spirits tonight. Is the weather bringing you down? How else can I help? I suppose I could try telling you a joke, but I only know one. And no, I shouldn't. I will refrain. It's quite filthy. That piques my interest. I don't mind dirty jokes. I spent a lot of time in taverns, you know. I'm almost certain I've heard them all. No, Flame, you don't understand. This is not meant for polite company. You don't need to be polite company all the time, do we? We can be a little impolite. It's not a little impolite. It is unforgivably dirty. Please, Lucius. Very well. You can't say I didn't warn you. It's not late to change your mind. Lucius, you're killing me. Do you want me to beg? I don't think I could go on without hearing it. He laughs in a low rumble in his chest and still makes me wait several seconds before finally delivering his dirty joke. A white horse falls in waist-deep mud. That's it. That's the dirtiest joke you know. Wait a minute. He tricked me. He played me for a fool. Oh, I should be so furious with it, but indignant laughter is already bubbling from between my lips. What? How dare you? It's not even funny. You're the worst. My laughter ripples into a snort, and I know it's futile to try to contain it. Lucius smiles at me all the while, encouragingly satisfied. God, I hate this vampire. I had a similar reaction when I first heard the joke. It pleases me to do it some justice. You burst out laughing? I don't remember my exact reaction. It was a long time ago. Well, do you remember who taught you that joke? A former guest, Gillian. Lucius' face softens and my laughter stops like a clogged drain. There's that sadness again. He, didn't try to barter with that joke, did he? Oh, God, can you imagine? No, this was before I began bartering people. A darker time. Were your darker times lifted with a joke about a white horse? Lucius smiles at me wryly. Well, you like me to tell you about him? I'm surprised myself when the words spilled from my mouth. Not if it troubles you. I mean, if you wish to tell me, I'll listen. Lucius hesitates, tapping on his collarbone while he musters the initiative to speak. Well, I was first exiled to the estate 300 years ago. There truly was no escape. I frequently fought with the desperate men and women who were sent here. They feared me even when I showed them kindness and reason, and made a point to attack me when I least expected it. My spine stiffens. The frightened, desperate outlook sounds grimly similar to my own back when I first arrived. You had no choice but to defend yourself. I did try other methods in hopes of coexisting, of earning their trust, but yes, they tended to turn on me regardless. It often resulted in a fight to the death. Their death at my hands. I never could resist untying them. I felt a certain kinship for them, I suppose, but it was inevitably dashed. It was never difficult to overpower them. They were humans, and I was an immortal being. I was becoming more powerful with age. Until one day, when I was careless, I had subdued an intruder and left her at the brink of death. Unbeknownst to me, conditions were ripe for her to turn. As a vampire spawned, she was vicious. Her anger overpowered any compulsion I had over her, and she managed to run me through in the same moment I ripped out her throat. Lucius' hands hovered over his chest where his room must have been. I was alive, but I was pinned down, paralysed in place. I was lucky to have fallen in the shadows near my coffin. The vampire spawn was not so lucky. She was well and truly dead, and she began to decompose, though those claws remained embedded in my chest as a parting gift. I was perpetually awake, but I could not move. I must have laid there for nearly 2 years. Lucius, I'm so sorry. You run into a lot of strife when you become as old as I have. It's not unusual. Yes, but it must have been harrowing. Mostly, I was just bored. He's being aloof, but his hand is massaging his chest right above his heart. I assume he doesn't want to show weakness. Gillian was the one who found me there. He gave me a wide berth at first, approached me only to use the vampire spawn's claws to cut his bonds before jumping away. Comically, really, but then I was practically a husk. I could sense him, but I could not move and could not speak. I would sense him coming and going each night, wandering the estate much like you've been doing. After some time, he returned to my side and tugged the claws out of my chest. He what? I knew the story must have been leading there, but it was still a bit of a shock. Why on earth would somebody release a petrified vampire? He must have been incredibly kind. He must have been incredibly stupid. Let's go with kind. He must have been incredibly kind. I suppose he felt some kinship for you. You were both trapped. He certainly was kind. Much too kind, I think. Lucius chuckles quietly. He was the one who drew that portrait, the scrap you found. We burned wood together to make charcoal and made all kinds of artwork during his stay. I destroyed much of his work when I lost him, and I regret allowing my emotions to get in the way of reason. It just wasn't fair, the way he convinced me to have compassion for others, the way his gentle nature allowed us to gather a motley little group. It wasn't fair the way he... The little group of guests I had, they're the ones who figured out a way to escape the blasted estate. I encouraged Gillian to go with him, but he wanted to stay behind. He wanted to stay with me. Which meant, of course, that my very next guest was a cruel one. I awoke to the intruder rifling through my things while Gillian bled out in the courtyard. Death is a fate all mortals share. I know no too well, but it shouldn't have been his time. And I let the story sink in. The next words are quietly careful. Did you kill his murderer? Ruthlessly, but it gave me no satisfaction. Lucius heaved a heavy, shuddering breath. Gillian was still gone. I was alone again, and I had no one else to blame. Do you wish you turned him? Were you in love with him? Let's go with that one. You were in love with him, weren't you? You become more direct with each passing day, Flame. Yes, I loved him. I'm no stranger to the company of men, women, and anyone in between. Neither was he. Though many years have passed, I still remember him fondly. He was a good man. It was some time after that I began bartering with my guests. Immediately offering them freedom made them cagey. They suspect me of foul play, of being up to something. But if it was as if they needed to pay a price for their freedom, help them feel at ease, in control, help them make sense of... Lucius gestured himself. I remember the scuffle we had when I first arrived, the way he disarmed me, but otherwise kept his distance, the way he prowled around and said those menacing things. You had to play the part people expected of you. It is exhausting, but they feared me more if I don't. And of course, bartering does not come from a place of pure altruism. It gives me something to look forward to, alleviates my apprehension of what the next guest will have in store. When one finds himself acting as the Queen's personal executioner, the odds are high that some of the people she sends will be dangerous. though occasionally I would have seemed some kind of offer, a listening ear. Like Gillian. Like you. I blinked at him, bewildered. Gillian was kind, but he was notoriously bad listener. He would have interrupted me 10 times just then, usually with some absurd tangent about how he thought snails were evanescent. What I mean to say is, thank you for listening to my sad old tale about a lost love. I've never told it to anyone before. Can I ask you one more question? Of course, anything. Something about that last word makes my stomach flutter. No, I must be hungry. I grab my deserted bowl and sip at the cold soup. If Gilly was such a good man, what did he do to get sent here? What was his crime? Lucius outright grins at the question. He edges a little closer to me as if he wishes to rope me into a conspiracy. Supposedly, he painted an unflattering portrait of a nobleman's daughter. What, that's it? Yes, and Gillian couldn't help it. He was both an artist and a prestigious painter, lauded for his accuracy and attention to detail. To hopefully make the girl more beautiful than she was, well, it would have been a lie and it would have tarnished his good name. The daughter's betrothed took one look at the portrait and cancelled their arrangement, leaving the nobleman high and dry with an unwed daughter. The nobleman needed someone to take the fall and convince the crown to send Gillian here, but it wasn't Gillian's fault the man had an ugly daughter. I clasped my hand over my mouth, my giggles are punctuated only by the sound of a crackling fire. I hadn't anticipated that Lucia would make me laugh more than once, let alone show such vulnerability tonight. And it's cold. It sounds like the artist was punished for revealing the truth, even if it wasn't entirely his intent to do so. In a way, I suppose I swiveled my lute into my lap and gazed down at it. It's all awash in glowing firelight. I think I'm all ready to tell you what I did, Lucius. He straightens immediately, attention. Really? Yes. You've kept me waiting for so long, I didn't expect... Hold on just a moment, I need a drink. Shall I fetch you a glass as well? I think it would be nice to keep my throat from going dry, yes. What do you have on the menu? Wine. You have wine? Where? Since when? I mean, sure, if you don't mind sharing. Lucius shoots me a mysterious, winning grin before he stalks off into the halls. Where does he hide these things? Every so often, Lucius will present me with some new object or tool from God knows where. Just earlier this week, he fetched me a ladder to climb the ledge when I complained about running out of bathing water. Once I climbed up, he made me promise not to attempt the perilous journey of swimming across the moat, and then handed me a bucket, told me where to take all the water I needed. I could swear I've walked through every hall and peeked in every room. Not once have I ever seen any ladders or buckets until he materialized them into existence. Maybe he's known creative spells, conjuring, magic. A vampire who knows magic, that'll be the day. Lucius returns as I muse over the idea, presenting me with my promised glass, deep red wine sloshed gently within, glistening like black opals in the room's low light. I would have brought you an entire barrel, but wine is hard to come by around these parts. Better be frugal with it. You can carry an entire barrel? I told you I have a strong arm. When I first arrived, I even hauled my coffin up all those flights of stairs. Admittedly, it was exhausting. I was strong enough to do it, but I don't have unlimited stamina. And why are you hauling your coffin upstairs? You want to be closer to the sky? You know me so well already. Lucius returns to his seat and crosses his legs, sipping the wine and peering at me over the brim. He looks very at ease indeed. At ease and powerful. I take a slow gulp of my own wine. It's sweeter than I expected, with an undertone of currants and plums. Well, hang on. It feels so strong. How was I able to escape you? I yanked myself free when I first arrived. That sounded dangerously close to a compliment, Flame. I'm just curious. I don't begrudge you for it, but surely you've realised by now that I am very disciplined and I have incredible self-control. I released you because I had no desire to restrain you. You were acting like a street cat who didn't want to be held. I did not wish to be scratched. Oh, gee, thanks. Disciplined? Incredibly self-controlled. You are full of praise for yourself tonight, Lucius. I'm serious. The attributes of my character ensure that I would never bring harm to you. Not unless you asked it of me. I cough into my wine. What is that supposed to mean? Do you need a water? No, I'm fine. Can you hear how fast my heart is beating? I pluck absentmindedly at the lute strings, still uncertain if I'm ready to reveal the parts of myself I'd rather forget. But he has been vulnerable with me. It's only fair that I am vulnerable with him. And there's no time like the present. I start with some context. Told you before that I grew up here in Alluvia. I neglected to mention that it was in an orphanage, Nightingale Gardens Home for Girls. His lips just barely twitches if he recognised the name. Wouldn't be surprised if so. It's a very old, long-established institution. One of his previous guests might have mentioned it or grown up there like me. Everyone told me it was an inevitable place to be, especially the matrons who were always so proud to work there. They told me girls would go as far as to murder their own parents in hopes of being sent to Nightingale Gardens. Never heard of it actually happening, but that was prevailing attitude. Because the girls of this orphanage were guaranteed to have a place in high society, were educated vigorously in matters of court, history, handwriting, sewing and entertainment. Once every several dozen years, the best and brightest girl were even chosen to become Alluvia's next queen. Did they have that tradition when you were human, Lucius? Yes, I believe I heard something about it in passing, but it was very long ago. Well, the tradition was in full swing when I was young. The last queen was growing old and infirm, and there were talks that the new queen would be chosen soon. How fortunate for you. Yes, you could have been chosen. No, I hated it there. I was stuffy and full of pompous snobs. The matrons had our entire lives planned out for us, without once stopping to ask us what we wanted to do. And they had the nerve to act like I should keep my mouth shut and be grateful. The other girls seemed content with their lot, which meant they didn't understand how I felt. They kept me at arm's length. I hated the pressure to succeed, and I got into a lot of trouble even back then. I never would have been in line for the throne. The closest person I had to a friend was an older girl named Ophelia. She was in line for the throne. We all knew she would be chosen too because she was perfect. She was beautiful, graceful, and always seemed to say the right thing. Always. She was always talking about the changes she'd like to make, the way she'd like to improve our kingdom. She does sound lovely, but Flame, forgive me for saying this. No one is perfect. Surely your Ophelia is not exempt. He looks a little surprised when I start laughing. You're right. You're absolutely right. Ophelia was a godforsaken rascal. She lied through her teeth with a smile, and no one was any the wiser. That she let me see her naughty, conniving side, I felt special, and she truly did want to make things better. She was clever and sharp as a knife, but she did care about the people around her. At least, that's what I believed. More wine? Yes, please. I drank deeply from my refilled glass before continuing. So when Ophelia was chosen and packed her bags, she promised me up and down that she would write every day, every single day. I knew that it was forbidden for Alluvia's crown to contact the outside world. We both knew that. Every queen was meant to cut all ties with everyone she ever knew before she was chosen. That was the rule. But I believed her, she was much smarter than me and so crafty, I really thought she'd find a way. I packed the covers of my songwriting journal, which I had placed at my side. I always tried to keep it near, even when it pains me. For all she ever sent me was this book, with its empty pages, and her little note on the inside cover. I thought she was encouraging me to write my songs in it, and it made me happy for a time, but I never heard from her again. Lucius watched me with his full attention. I can't stop now. So what else could I do? I begged the matrons to grant me a position in the castle. I begged them day and night. All I wanted to do was see Ophelia again. Until finally they snapped me and told me to stop asking. They told me they barely managed to secure a position for me as a court entertainer in a faraway land, and that I needed to be grateful. But I wasn't grateful. I argued with them until they took me by the ear and showed me what for. I'll never forget it, how they told me to grow up and stop being childish while they raked me across the back. Apparently my destination had no complaints about women with whipping scars. Flame. I ran away soon after that, with just the clothes I wore and, honestly, the very things I have with me now. The look they gave me, the songwriting journal from Ophelia, and a handful of coins. Lucius spoke slowly, reluctant to interject, but unable to contain his curiosity. Your crime was running away from this wretched orphanage? Oh no, not at all. I gave them the slip. His shoulders sagged with relief. I wager he feels some kinship with the little girl I once was. I went on to become a travelling vagabond for many years. I performed everywhere I could, and I saw the world. It was difficult in its own way. People distrusted a new face, and meaningful connections were hard to come by. I was even accused of witchcraft sometimes for some reason, something about corrupting their women and stealing their men with their siren songs. Some days were freeing and exciting back then, while other days made me feel like a ghost in search of a final resting place. But no matter what I did or where I went, I just couldn't stop thinking about Ophelia. Did you have feelings for this Ophelia of yours? Gods, Lucius, she was practically an adult and I was 6. Which means, yes, I was absolutely obsessed with her. Not that she ever seemed to fancy anyone. I'd ask her, if she found some boy or girl attractive. She had this way of wrinkling her nose as she turned down every single one. Like you. Like? I gawk at him. I notice you wrinkle your nose sometimes when you find something disagreeable. Were you not aware? My face suddenly feels rather hot. Anyway, well, you know how young girls idolize older women? I do. Yeah, Wait, you do? Yes, I had a younger sister once. We never had the chance to grow close, but I knew they were eager to idolize. This is news to me. I start to ask him about it, but he holds up a hand to stop me. Please continue on with your tale. I apologize for the interrupt. He suddenly grimaces, and my brows knit with concern. It's not the first time I've seen that expression.
Lucius? Are you okay?
I'm fine. The coffin.
He flinches and he takes a deep breath.
I'll be fine for a while longer. It just calls to me sometimes.
If you need to go back early...
Lucius slams his fist on the arm of the seat, his wine jostles slightly in the other hand.
No. I'll not let it squander what little time I have away from it. Forgive me, please. Continue.
I tap my finger against the cover of my journal, feeling a little agitated, but wanting to gratify his wishes. He'll get upset if I speed through the story, but I can try to shorten it for him.
Even from distant kingdoms, I would hear terrible gossip about Alluvia's young queen. Apparently, she did nothing to better anyone's life but her own. She kept our cruelest traditions intact, torturing and slaughtering people in droves. Most notably, she kept the tradition of sacrificing people to the crown's pet vampire. No offense.
None taken. Inspiring such unease in its people helps the monarchy stay in power. Fear of punishment, I always heard, is a better motivator than acts of love.
But Ophelia was supposed to be different, and the people were unhappy. There were talks of a revolt. Although I wasn't the most talented bard in the lands, I was starting to get some renown and make strong connections. I can still scarcely believe it, but I managed to get an audience with Queen Ophelia. I was meant to perform for her.
Lucius's eyes slowly went wide with realization.
You didn't.
Definitely spoke my mind in front of the queen and her entire court, but I did it through song.
You didn't.
Lucius is torn perfectly between horrified and scandalously amused, clasping his hand over his jaw with disbelief.
Do you want to hear the song?
His gestures were enthusiastically erratic now. He waits for me to go on and can hardly sit still as he pours himself some more wine. As for me, I set my glass down and clear my throat. When Lucius applauds me, it is as gradual as it is resonant. The very furniture around us seems to shudder in response.
Gods!
That was a more subdued version. Back in court, I was screaming the lyrics at the top of my lungs.
I only wish I could have seen it for myself. He must have been radiant.
Lucius looks at me with plain, unmistakable admiration. I feel my cheeks growing warm again. But I tell myself it's just the wine.
I always knew Alluvia was full of busybody moralists. To think they'd punish you so gravely for such a thing.
Uh-huh.
Simply ungrateful.
Yep. Uh-huh.
Oh, I don't know about gravely. I think I like it here.
And I like having you here.
Our eyes meet with a slow yet abrupt understanding of each other. We're so alike in so many ways, I can hardly believe it. The storm had stopped at some point. It's quite enough that I can hear his breath, steady and strong even from this distance. And then he grimaces again. I pivot in time to see the sky now clear of black clouds, shifting into the first dusky hints of daybreak. Lucius. Yes, I'm going. No need to rush me. You may have the rest of this wine, if you please. He smiles at me one last time, strained and fleeting, before he turns into the mist and disappears into the shadows. I'll see you tomorrow night, Lucius. I know I'm speaking into an empty room. I know it all too well, but I already miss him.